This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I am Steve Gould, old ginger face, back at you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for checking out the podcast. Thank you for the binge listening. If you're new to the show, this is where you will hear the men and women of law enforcement tell their most intense, crazy, bizarre stories that you absolutely will not believe, to give you a better appreciation for what these men and women are actually doing out there on your benefit. So welcome to the show. Thank you for the rating and reviewing that's been going on. We're well over 1K on Apple, which is awesome. But whatever you listen to the show on, I always appreciate a 5-star review if you can do it. I love you for it. And also, if you really love the show, you can go to Patreon and become a Patreon supporter. You'll get a vinyl sticker all mailed to you. You get some other fringe benefits from choosing either patrolman or sergeant. And it's a good time. I release episodes early there, and you can directly message me and ask a question. I'll ask it on the show, stuff like that. So if you can't do that, I totally understand. Things are tight. Have no fear. The show will remain free, as the purpose is to get this out to as many people as possible. But it is nice to have a little bit of income coming in, so it pays for the web hosting and the software that I use, and the podcast hosting and the editing software is a monthly charge. So it's really nice at the end of the month when I go to pay those bills, and I have it paid for, and then a little extra to buy a couple bales of hay for my Nigerian dwarf coats. So whatever you can do, truly appreciate that. Today we have the second half of a popular police podcast on. He did 12 years at a large SoCal agency. He is actually active still, so we're not going to get into details of his identity. But he is, like I said, the host of the War Stories podcast, along with Thomas Gandy, who you heard from before, who was a fantastic interview and had some great stories. And this is going to be much the same. So without any further delay, without further ado, let me bring on Chuck from War Stories. Sir, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going, man. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm glad you could take some time off from podcasting.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's nice to be here. Thankfully I'm not hungover from the Marine Corps birthday, so
yeah, I enjoyed all the happy birthday to all the good and proud Marines out there. I saw a lot of pictures of retired Marines eating devil dogs, and what I really like is the memes where Marines make fun of other Marines, which is funny. You know what I mean? It's like all about ball busting.
Absolutely, yeah. It was cool. I met if some of you guys are familiar with the show Full Metal Jacket, or the movie Full Metal Jacket with Arlie Ermey.
Hell
his
yeah.
bar, or he co-owns, his family now co-owns it because he passed away, but a brewery. Went there last night. It's called Bravery Brewery, or Bravery Brewing, and his family was there last night, and they brought in Raptor Man from Full Metal Jacket to
nice.
come and speak and guest host it, and it was crazy. What was the craziest thing is that they did the youngest Marine and the oldest Marine, basically the oldest Marine passing of the torch to the youngest Marine, and like of the cake cutting ceremony.
Yep.
And this old Marine, he's 98 or 99 years old.
Wow.
And he was a private first class when he got out. Which he must have said some shit, because he was in for a minute, and he was in a lot of battles. And Chesty Puller, he was in a unit with Chesty Puller, and they actually were fighting alongside one.
Who's Chesty Puller?
You don't know who Chesty Puller is? Chesty Puller is like,
I'm not a military guy.
Marine.
Oh, okay.
Chesty Puller is like the Marines Marine. He's Chesty Puller. It's like he's history. Like the dude went from enlisted all the way to general. Like that's
wow,
unheard of.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he started at the bottom and ended at the top, and like it's crazy. I mean, he is the Marines Marine. He is the ghost of all of Marines. It's crazy. If anyone wants to look into it, Chesty Puller.
I definitely will.
It's crazy. And in this to know someone, not to know someone, to meet someone who fought alongside him is just It's wow, because of how much chesty puller means to the Marine Corps.
So the other guy, the oldest Marine there, from what I understand, the military, just from doing backgrounds and talking to military officers and enlisted, it's like they make you pretty much go up rank. Isn't it hard not to? Is it hard to stay at the same rank? I thought you like after a few years you just kind of bump up.
No. Not in the Marine Corps.
Oh,
Marine
different
Corps,
in the Marines.
yeah, you have cutting scores. It's very different. And I know we're getting sidetracked from the from the police stuff, but
No, it's interesting.
you have cutting scores in different units. Some units are a lot higher than others. Some are really low. You know, like you see dudes in 4 years making staff sergeant. You're like, you had low cutting scores. Our cutting score was super high just for corporal, and I took me 2 tries to get it because my gunny did not like me, and then after I gave him 4 years of my life, and I actually turned down sergeant because he was trying to give me sergeant. He actually ended up liking me. I
Right.
was probably one of his favorite Marines. So it's kind of like one of those bad relationships that end really well. And
Yeah.
he wanted me to continue to work for him, but I chose not to and turned it down. And but yeah, I left as a corporal and a non-commissioned officer, corporal, and it was hard to promote because our cutting scores were so high, and us and infantry had probably some of the highest cutting scores.
No kidding. Yeah. Now
It's
that
crazy. I don't know why, but
you mentioned that, when I did, I only did backgrounds for 2 years, but I never did a background on a Marine who applied to be at LAPD.
oh,
It was all like I did a lot of Air Force, Army, Navy, but I don't recall. Well, I'll take that back. There was one Marine, but it didn't go well in the meet and greet. So I didn't really get to talk to people in the Marines and figure all that stuff out. But I think that stuff's fascinating. I got to be at one of those ceremonies at in the backgrounds unit because backgrounds is pretty big, and on the Marine's birthday, one of the Marines who was I forget what rank he was. I think might have been a detective, but he got us all together. There wasn't a lot of Marines there, so he got the Marines together, and they did the oldest and the youngest, and they had the cake and the whole thing, and I got to kind of witness it, and it was cool because I think just to have a little more people there. He invited like the whole unit, so it was like I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, they're cutting a cake, like that. I have no idea what this is about, but it was really cool to have a tradition and something to be proud of like that. It's the only branch where you're always a Marine, right? You're not retired or you're not ex or whatever.
right. You're not ex, you're not former. You are a Marine. You earn the title. You never lose it. It's once a Marine, always a Marine. And we take that very seriously, and we will correct you and make it known if you mess up. Sometimes I'm just like,
Yeah,
let this one slide. So case by case basis.
it's okay,
like
Grandma.
when it comes to calls. Yeah, kind of like when it comes to calls and law enforcement, it's case by case basis.
Right.
So yeah, it's wild. It's a very deep tradition. And for those who are like, oh, the Marine Corps birthday, what was it? It was founded out of a bar in Tun Tavern, out of Tun Tavern, Philadelphia, and Pennsylvania.
That's cool.
November 10th, 1775. And that's like the only military branch born out of a fucking bar.
It's great, man. Everything
Like
about it's so cool.
Like, hey, let's get together and go fight.
Yeah.
All right.
It's cool. The best. It's so cool. The my buddy was telling me the other day, randomly talking about, he said he saw a Marine recruiter or somebody high up in the Marines. They're talking about retention and getting new Marines in. Like, we need to like get more people to be Marines. Like, obviously that's every branch's job, is to make more of themselves. And they were talking about like, well, are you going to do this with this benefit, or would this entice them or whatever? And he's like, we ain't doing any of that. He goes, what I tell him is, you get to be a Marine your whole damn life. He said that's the only thing I'm throwing at him, and it was just great because he's like, he didn't want to throw any perks. He's like, hey, you get to be a Marine. That's the perk. And if you don't want to do that, then we don't want you.
Yeah, and it's funny that when I joined the Army, it was giving like signing bonuses. You sign up with your friends, and I wanted to go to the Army with my friends, and my dad looked at me and goes, "I'll disown you to go to the Army." And I was like, "Cool, dude." So I ended up not going to the Army and didn't get a signing bonus. And I actually almost got shafted on my job, and because I ended up transferring from West Coast to East Coast and switching out my recruiters. And I already had tanks lined up out here with the recruiter. And then when they sent me over to Maine, where my dad lived, because he'd moved when I graduated high school. They took away all my options, didn't tell me, and said, "Yeah, you're ready to go. Just go over there and go whenever." And they put me in an open contract. And then finally, the recruiting station and whatever the staff sergeant or the gunny over there checked my stuff and was like, "Hey, you don't have a job, right?" And I was like, "Whoa, I'm supposed to have tanks. Let's pump the brakes because I'm leaving here very soon." And they're like, "Yeah, no, they got mad at you when you left apparently because they put your ass open contract." And I was like, "What does that mean?" They're like, "Infantry, a cook, or something else." And I was like, "That's awesome. Can I change that and switch it?" And they're like, "What do you want?" I was like, "I want tanks." They're like, "Tanks is gone. Can't do it. If you want tanks, you're going to have to wait till the new year." My dumb ass is impatient. I should have waited. I really should have waited, but I didn't. And I was like, "Well, what can you put me in?" They're like, "We can put you at ground option." I was like, "What is ground option?" They're like, it's a combat spot." And I was like, "Cool." And they're like, "And it's got one of the three things you want. It's got tanks in it, but it also has arty and Amtrax." And I was like, "What's Amtrax?" And they go, "It's like a floating tank." And I was like, "Cool, that I'm good with all these options. Great, let's just do that." And I ended up getting Amtrax, and that was interesting. And it was not a floating tank. Kind of like a floating tank. That's what I tell civilians. It's kind of like a floating tank, except there's not one big gun on it. There's two guns on it, and it's made of aluminum, so it can float, and it's very slow. It's tracked, and that's about the only similarity it has to a tank, is that it's tracked, and that's about it.
Wow.
That was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, you really start feeling that the ownership they have over you when they're like, "No, you're not covered by any police contract right now. You're going to go where we tell you."
Yeah, it was definitely weird going from military to law enforcement, and that kind of like going into it, because I had a break for about a year and I went to college, and then I got into law enforcement after I got out of the military after that year. And I was like, "Oh man, it's gonna be just the same. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna be told what to do. I'm not gonna really have any choices." And I actually had choices, and I was like, "Well, this is cool." This is the first time I've ever really had choices. And then that was about the extent of all my choices. I didn't have very many after that. Right. And I was like, "Well, I got at least some choices. I'm not government property anymore." So
right.
That's a bit different.
In the military, it's like, "What's your opinion on this?" "Wait, I haven't given it to you yet."
Exactly. Law enforcement, it's just like a lot of micromanaging, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit, some good commands, like you have good commands, you have bad commands, you have good sergeants and good command staff at one point, and then you have a bad one, and then you have a good one. It just seems like all the good ones, they disappear.
Yeah.
And all the bad ones stick around. And you're like, great.
Right. And when you work at a large agency too, you have a lot of choices of like where you want to hop around to. So you must have to talk to people and be like, "Is it good over there?" Or like your friend's supposed to be like, "Come over here."
Yeah, kind of. But if you piss off the wrong person, then you go to leave, they'll give a heads up to the command that you're going to. And they'll let them know. So yeah, it's a big agencies. You can move around, but also people talk, and people are very vindictive is what I found. And especially when it comes to lieutenants, they become the most vindictive and spiteful ones I have met. And there's a couple captains that are pretty spiteful and vindictive. But for the most part, I've met lieutenants who are pretty like gnarly, who just, they get upset because maybe they didn't get the spot they wanted, or they're stuck on patrol for too long. They didn't get a specialized unit. That's the biggest grump. Like, they make it known. I've had a couple lieutenants and captains who just made it known that they were displeased with being in patrol. And they were like, "I've done my time. I need to go out. I deserve this." And they're telling like all of us, and we're like, "Well, too much information. Maybe you should keep that behind closed doors." Because
that goes up, not down.
Right. You're throwing a temper tantrum.
Right.
And I'm like, we don't care. And we're like, "Okay, yeah, we knew you're this way, but whatever." And then they kind of start taking out on other people, and then you piss them off at the wrong time, and then they become super angry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's unfortunate. I have experienced that myself, so I totally get what you're saying. Chuck, can you take us back to a young officer, Chuck, on the streets? The first call you went to that was a hot call to you.
Like my first ever call?
Well, just the
first one I was like stood out.
Yeah, the first call that you had like a little bit of adrenaline dump. Like you thought like got your heart pumping. It was,
Oh,
hot.
my Lord. So that's difficult to answer because I worked at a very fast area when I first came on. And the funny thing is that the reason why I chose that area was because of food.
Solid. I like it.
I was like, they're like, why'd you choose that area? It's close to nothing and far away from everything. And it's in the middle of the shithole. And I was like, do you not know where it's at? Like, there's a bunch of great food spots down there. Like, I'm a foodie. Like, that's like massive for me. And they're like, you chose that because of food? And I was like, 100%. I'm a fat boy at heart. So that's why I chose it. But it was a very fast area, lots of gangs. MS-13 and 18th Street basically surrounded the station I was at. It wasn't close to, it was in the middle of, in between two freeways that were very hard to get to and a lot of traffic. And it was very busy shit. The first call on probation I ever had was a rape. And that was alarming. And I was like, oh my God, they told us in the academy we would never do this. But the one that really stood out, that really like got my blood pumping, I was about 4 months in. And we responded to a call. It was a shooting, and we were right down the street from it. And my partner and I, at the time, my training officer and I, who was basically my partner because we hit it off really well and he really liked me, was like, hey man, let's go. And so we got in the car and we were actually sitting in a liquor store at the time, not to buy liquor, but because we were on duty, but to go in there and get drinks because there was an old lady who she was in her 80s and she was still running the store, and she'd been running the store since the riots back in the day, the Los Angeles riots. And so we always sat there at night with her because she didn't have anybody else. And her son, I think, was in the military. She used to help with the store. So we just go there every night around close and just sit with her. And then this call came out. We were right down the street. So we, like any shooting call, you get to tell real quick if it's good or bad. Like if it's going to be legit or if it's just going to be, oh, I heard shots fired in the area, but that's it. And only one call comes in. The calls started dropping like consecutively, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And then I think by the time we got into the car and we were, hauling ass in the Crown Vic down the street, we had probably 8 calls come in, and we're like, this is good. This can be legit. And we get down there and we're looking for the shooter of what the description that we had, the loose description. And it was a, dark male Hispanic, dark clothing. And that's it. So anybody in dark clothing we would see, we were going to stop, and we didn't see anybody. And then I look out my passenger side window because I was the boot and I'm, doing books like a good boot. And I look to my right and I go, stop, that's him. And that's the victim. And we go run over, and dude had just been 10 ringed in the chest and was, he was basically moving his mouth like a fish. Like, can you take a fish out of water and it starts gasping for air? Mm-hmm. That's what he was doing. He was done. Like there was really no saving this kid. And it sucked because I grabbed him and I held him and I was like, dude, and he was just, there was nothing we really could have done at that point. And he ended up dying right there in my hands. And then, like every cop, we set him down and we switched the switch and we go, okay, now let's go into investigative mode. Now let's go sweep the area. Let's do the rest. And we just kind of put it out of our mind. And then later found out that this young man, this kid, was the reason why he got shot was so petty. He basically stood up for some female's honor the day before, who he saw outside of his apartment getting tuned up by this kid, this male Hispanic kid who ended up being a gangster. And he basically intervened, stopped it, disrespected the gangster, and I think he smacked him around a little bit too. They got into a squabble, and he won. And the kid the gangster ran away with his tail between his legs. And then came back the next day and waited for him, just laid in wait for this kid to come out. He's like, I know he's going to come out. And the kid popped out because the kid was going to pick up his mom at the airport. So he was there at like 3 a.m. to catch an Uber, or I don't think we had Ubers at the time. So he was trying to catch a taxi. And he was going to pick his mom up because he was getting ready to go into the police academy shortly thereafter. And his mom was out there for that. And needless to say, the kid never made it to that. And he never made it to pick up his mom. And his mom had to find out at the airport that she had just lost her son.
Damn, man. That's brutal.
Yeah, and honestly, like there's just so many like fast-paced stories. Like I was just telling that I was thinking of another one, and then I completely forgot it because my brain doesn't want to think about these things. You know, like it's
Yeah.
just they're rough.
Yeah, did that as like being newer and having that experience, did that stick with you for a while, or was it just work was
Yeah.
too busy to even think about it? Or
Well, okay, so yes, it was too busy to think about it, but then like when you work 12-hour shifts and you have 4 or 5 days off because you just worked four in a row, you have a lot of time to think, and I think that's when it started to hit me. Um, and I contacted my buddy who I served in the Marine Corps with, and I was basically telling him about it, and I was like, I was having a hard time with it because you don't expect to, you know, you kind of expect when you join, you're like, oh, I'm going to get in probably a shooting, I'm probably going to get into a lot of fights, I'm going to get into some crazy stuff, like
right.
it's just going to happen, and so you're kind of expecting it, but to actually have it happen, and to deal with it is what's different. It's
Yeah, I can imagine. Is there any kind of when that happened? I know it was a while ago, but was there any kind of debriefing, or did they offer you stuff like counseling or
no,
anything, or just
no.
nothing?
No, so we always debrief after every call. Like used to be the tradition. It has kind of gone by the wayside after hot calls, but I did my probationary time in a very traditional place. So we would always debrief. But that night, I actually had to leave early. Um, they were letting me go home early because I had something I needed to do. And you don't really see boots going home early, but I needed to be home, and they let me go the one time, and that it just happened to be that night. And so we did the investigation, and we did knocking on doors, and we spent about 2 hours doing that, and then I left about an hour early, and I didn't get a chance to debrief because they were still working. And when honestly, when you have like homicides and stuff like that and murders, um, you don't get a chance to debrief with everyone. Maybe the next day in roll call, and that's a lot of times when that would happen. We would try to debrief it in roll call if we couldn't get to everybody, but
Right.
it really was there was no debrief on that because they just I don't know
Probably
didn't
you
talk
didn't.
about it.
They probably figure you. We didn't shoot him, so I mean, if you had shot him, they definitely would have done something. But they figured it's just a
Right,
traumatic thing you went to, and
and you handle so many shootings, at least I did, that at some point you're just like, it was just another one. It was just another one.
right. Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
brutal. I mean, I've always worked at smaller agencies, and like that would be a big deal, and they would, especially currently, they would
yeah.
offer you all kinds of stuff. They'd be
Oh,
all
that's
they
great.
they'd be all over you to take care of you.
Yeah, I mean, I've responded to so many shootings, executions. It's crazy. And now that we're talking, like another time I was on, like brand new, um, we actually did a raid in a which we call casita, and it was a gangsters, basically brothel and a gambling den in someone's house. And I know we've got other things to get to. Just a long story short,
No, please go ahead.
basically we ended up getting there because someone called, basically said they're holding their friend hostage inside. We take that very seriously. So we get there, surround it, do a surround and call out, airships overhead. We're talking to this other female, and we kind of had the idea that she was probably scorned that she didn't get let in to hang out with her friend. And the gangster's like, "Nah, kick rocks, get out of here." And she got mad. We found this out later, but she actually was like, we thought she was scorned. She didn't get let in, and that's why she called. She basically did that. But I mean, she was calling on good stuff because we got a lot of good stuff out of it. And it was so like dense with gangsters. We did a call out, and we probably got 30, 40 people out of there, gangsters and females, and like,
Wow.
yeah, like stripping clothes, and like it was wild. And then so we had to go in and search. And I was on point with a slug shotgun, and we're searching. We already found a couple guns, and we're searching everything high and low. This place is a fucking disaster. And we're going into every room, hitting the closets, hitting under the bed, throwing shit because like it's just so dirty and nasty that you have to check all these spots where a person could hide.
Right.
And you know, a lot of beds were on like boxings and crates and shit, and you're like, wow, this is just nuts. So you're like trying to search everything, and I have a shotgun, so I'm just point and stack up on this one closet. It's the last room, the last closet where we know someone's in there, and so you're prepared for it. Pop the door open, homeboy's got a gun, and barrel goes straight to his face. And I was like, you move, I'm gonna blow your fucking brains all over the back of that wall.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, dropped his gun, and we took him into custody. without incident and popped him out. And that was really interesting because, you do all these in the academy, you do all these static searches and things like that to teach you how to do it. To know that once you go into patrol, it's going to happen. You're going to find someone eventually, but you're kind of like, at this point, I had done so many searches. So it's kind of like, okay, well, I didn't find anyone in any of those other like 50 searches I did.
Right. You almost get complacent, it's like.
Kind of. And then it happens and you're like,
yeah. He's lucky you didn't just level his head right there.
oh man, that would have been bad. It would have been a stump because I had a slug. And technically, I wasn't really supposed to have the slug either. But my partner says, hey, if shit goes south, he's like, you're a United States Marine. He goes, I know you know how to use my M16 or the shotgun, probably better than me. So I'm going to put you on it every single time. And he goes, I will go to bat for you if you have to use it. Even though I know it's out of policy, I will take the fall for it. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. Yeah, I'll run that thing.
After that, was he like, maybe wait till you're qualified on that one? Or was he still cool with it?
No, every time we would go and get like a hot call and where we had to, like, we did a bunch of alarms at banks that that came out legit. Because you can tell those two, just like a shooting, that if they're like, that's bullshit, it's just a code 30 ringer, it's just an alarm call, whatever. This happens all the time. It's a faulty switch, or it's a faulty phone line or a faulty fax line that puts it out. But this was like actually the silent button. And both times were legit, but they were legit to the person, the operator, the teller. But it was just bogus. It was just some like transient or some gangster getting loud or something. So he'd put me on it every single time. And that first training officer I had, every single time, I had more time like on that stick than I think anybody that was on probation.
How's it work where you're at for specialty weapons? Is it as simple as going to the range and qualifying on it, or do you have to take a class? And
so for slug shotgun, you can carry a shotgun, but you have to be certified in slugs. You have to go to slug school. Now they've made it to a point where you're a slug operator, but if a certified slug operator, you can shoot slugs if no certified slug operator is there. So we have slugs now, but as soon as a slug operator shows up, you relinquish control and you download the slugs and you throw in your double out buck.
And that's got to be because of over penetration issues, and
they're more trained, I guess. They go to the school, so it's liability, but they realize that they can cut the liability if they train everyone on slug. But it helps with liability if a slug operator is there and they can relinquish control to that certified slug operator, because then they have more protections, I guess.
Right.
Or
I mean, like
from the city.
Slug versus buckshot would be like, I assume buckshot would probably, like, if a slug, if you don't know your backdrop and you're not cognizant of that, and or even if you shoot somebody, a slug is like an ounce of lead. It could just keep going.
Right.
Where buckshot, like, I mean, it's still like, they're still big lead balls, but they maybe
like 7 of them though
wouldn't be such an issue. Yeah, but that's the other thing. They're also not like laser point accurate like a slug is. So I don't know why agencies do things, but
I don't know either. And you have to be accountable for every shot. So they're like, be careful if you shoot the shotgun. Make sure that you're close
it's
distance.
It's a scatter gun.
Anything farther than like 25, throw in the slug. Okay. And then so you would have slug operators, bring it up like a rifle, and they're like, okay, cool, this dude's pretty far. I'm going to bring up the slug because it basically, now the shotguns are out of business because it's too far. And if you just shoot, maybe one pellet would hit, and then you have like 6 more going off, and you're like, oof.
Yeah.
And then for M16, you have to go to the school. There's like no exception really about it. You can't operate one unless you go to the school. And I was operating one like a good portion of my probation.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, like you said, you're I almost said ex-Marine. Don't leave the show. You're a Marine, so they probably figure, well, this will hold up. He's got plenty of training.
Yeah, and I could have articulated it, and so could have my partner, that he just got out of the military. He's very well trained on it, and I was. And so, yeah, it was interesting.
Damn, man. Chuck, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing you dealt with? I know there's probably a zillion to pick from, but anything stand out that's like so weird?
Yes. So I kind of told you before we started. So it's a dark and stormy night, and I'm working my first area outside of probation. So I'm working with just regular partners. I'm just a regular patrol officer, and we get this call middle of the night, and it's an active shooter, or not an active shooter. I'm sorry, not an active shooter. It's multiple suspects dead or down at a residence. Guy's calling. He's saying, "I just killed a bunch of people. I need help." Fuck. Okay. The whole station unasses, and we basically surround this house. Airships overhead. It's dark, cold night. A little bit of wind, and it's just eerie as shit out. So it's just spooky. It's really spooky. And so we're there. I'm trying to think what time of year it was. I don't know, but it was spooky as shit. And so we get there. We're stacking up on this wall. I'm second in the line. We have a sergeant there who, this guy is a dum-dum. But he basically stacks us up and he's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take two teams. We're going to make our way to the front. And this is before we had shields or anything like this. So we make our way to the front with a 4-man stick. And then we have an arrest team, behind us. And so we're going to go up with like 6 people. And the sergeant's going to be there. And as we're getting ready for our assignments, all of a sudden I'm like, behind you, suspect. And the airship's going overhead, like, hey, suspect's walking towards you. And I'm sure everyone's seen, what is it? Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when the dude comes out and he has like the apron.
Oh yeah.
It's like covered in blood and stuff, like minus the mask. This dude came out in an apron holding what looked to be a paring knife. So like best thing I can describe is when you go to Subway and they're cutting your sandwich, that little tiny ass knife.
Oh yeah.
It's about 4 inches long and really thin and very sharp.
Yep.
He's holding one of those and he comes out and he's hitting his chest fucking over and over again. And I'm like, What is he doing? And we're like, stop. So we take our guns up, guns on target or on suspect, on the threat. And so we come up and we're giving him commands. And my sergeant's like, okay, Chuck, holster and go hands on. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to put gloves on first. He's like, we don't have time. I was like, the fuck we don't. We have him at gunpoint. He stopped and he's armed with a knife, but if he moves, just shoot him.
Yeah.
Like if he tries to come out, just shoot him. Like at this point, it's a deadly force option.
Right.
I'm not going fucking hands on. Let me put my gloves on first, and then I'll think about going hands on. Okay. And so I put my gloves on because I was like, I don't want HIV. I don't want Hep C. I don't want fucking AIDS or anything like that. So I'm like, hold on. Like we don't know. He's covered in blood. Like he's dripping blood. And I put my gloves on. He drops a knife. I go to take him into custody and I'm handcuffing him. I look at him and the dude has stabbed himself so many times in his chest. He's bubbling air out of his chest.
Jeez.
And so we take him, throw him in the back of an ambulance with another unit and get him out of there after we search him, of course. And he's under arrest for something at this point. He's being detained for, whatever. Long story short, he's not under arrest. He's being detained and possible mental evaluation, 5150 call, because he's stabbing himself, right? So he's endangered himself and others. We go and we search the house and everything. No one's dead. No one's down. When we search that thing high and low, and there were supposed to be people scattered in the front lawn, inside the house. Airships like, we don't see anybody.
Wow.
And so we go and we search everything. We don't find anyone. And so we ended up placing him on a 5150 hold for him stabbing himself, and booked everything as evidence. And that was weird though.
So weird.
Like, I never experienced that. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, you think if you're that crazy, why not just charge you guys with the knife and end it? Like if you're crazy enough to stab yourself multiple times, why not just, suicide by cop? Just do that. Just end it. But
yeah. And that's just, yeah. So like, and I've seen 5150s charges. Like it happens all the time. It was just, I don't know. He didn't.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
That SoCal water.
Yeah. Dude, and I've almost been to a lot of shootings. Like it's like they're crazy in Southern California. It's just like the drugs, the undiagnosed mental illness. A lot of it's caused by drugs. Like they go off their rocker and they'll charge you. Like and fights on. And
there are a lot of shoot 'em ups in SoCal. We lived there for 4 years, and my wife and I were like, first of all, we stopped watching the news like probably 6 months into living there, but. There are shootings, and not just in the big cities, like in the cities surrounding LA, like Pomona, Colton, San Bernardino, Ontario. They're getting shoot 'em ups all the time. It's the weirdest thing. so, and and a lot of the we lived in Ontario, close to San Antonio, that road, and I had the guys at LAPD look at the area before we put an offer on the house because they knew Ontario, and they're like, yeah, you're good. Just don't go 2 streets south from there. So we got into like a nicer area, tiny house, and in the daytime you walk around, it was beautiful, palm trees, all this other stuff. But then Christmas Day, 2 streets over, some guy shot his mom, and we're like, this is like, we're from little towns in New England, so to us this is mayhem out here. Like, people are frigging nuts out here. There's just so much. It's just, there's so much humanity stacked on humanity. Like Ontario, a little city, has 200,000 people in it. That's the size of one of Massachusetts' larger cities. Like Boston, yeah, it's huge, but like Worcester, Springfield, those other places, they have like 200,000. That's considered like a big city here. And those orbit LA. I mean, those things are like a dime a dozen out there. 200,000 people cities.
Right.
It's crazy.
And we have a lot of big agencies. Yeah, and we have a lot of big agencies out here too. that that technically should be considered small agents, but they're big agencies compared to everywhere else. So
yeah,
there's a lot. And then the city that I live in, the county, I should say, there's shootings and stuff every day. Like, there was just an execution shooting like 2 weeks ago, near a country bar. Like, it's just, the wild stuff happens all over. So like Southern California is a hotbed all over. So you have the Bay and the South Bay, and then all middle stuff, and it's all crazy.
Yeah, I know. We had a guy in like around where we are. They're always sure to tell you like this was not an active thing of violence. This was like gang related, or this was like a dispute that happened later. But when we were in Cali, it was like, oh yeah, somebody locked the gas station clerk in the booth, shot him, and lit the place on fire. They didn't know each other, by the way. It's like that happened in Los Feliz. I was like, this is supposed to be a nice part of the city. You know what I mean? Like, it was
right.
It just, the stuff is everywhere, man. So unreal. So I know you got a lot of these for the next question. So just let it rip. Share what you want to share. You don't, by any means, I'm sure you don't have time in the day to go through all of them, and I would love to have you back on anyways. So can you just tell us about a few choice, intense / terrifying moments from working in SoCal?
Yeah. Man. Trying to, like, I have so many shootings calls that I've been to that are terrifying. I'm just trying to pick the one that scared me the most. Probably my shooting. But yeah, that one messed with me, just like the one where the kid died in my hands.
Yeah.
I mean, I have other ones that were like heartbreaking and stuff like that, but like terrifying. Yeah. Got involved in an officer involved shooting. It was wild, man. So we're sitting there. It's the middle of the night. We're working nights, and me and my partner, we're hungry. So we're sitting in the Carl's Jr. drive-through, because it's like the only thing that's open. And so we're sitting there, and we're trying to we just ordered our food, or we're getting ready to order our food, and I'm kind of dozing off in the passenger seat. My partner's driving, and I trust my partner to keep a head on a swivel. And so I'm really tired. It's like 3 a.m. And everything bad that happens at 3 a.m. No one good on the street or no one that's at 3 a.m. who's on the street is generally good. Like, it's all a bunch of assholes mainly who are out at that time, and drunks.
Right.
Is basically the sentiment from law enforcement. If you talk to any law enforcement officer in any agency, 3 a.m. and there's just no one good on the street. Basically, it's after midnight. There's a bunch of drunks and criminals on the street for the most part. Now, there are good people, because we go home in the middle of the night too, so there are good people on the roads. But right. So we're sitting there, and the tone comes out, and we hear it, and we're like, ooh, we know exactly who area that is, and we know he's going to take it. And it just so happens one of my best friends, he's my classmate, it's his area. And I'm like, hey man, I look at him and I'm all groggy. I'm like, we should start rolling, dude. That's Tom's area. Not the Tom from the show.
Different Tom.
But my buddy is named Tom. And I was like, that's Tom's area. And he's working with his partner, Brett. And I'm like, we should go, man. And he's like, all right. Next thing we know, we hear them and it's going in route code 3, and I'm like, yeah, we're backing. And so I was like, show us backing code 3 from the area we're at, and we're like, just forget the food. So we end up rolling code 3. We're groggy, tired. I'm trying to bring up the call. And then I start briefing my partner, hey, this is the call. This is where it's at. It's on the north side of the street. Hey, just be advised. Hey, this is what the suspect looks like. And we end up pulling right behind the other officers. They just went code 6, and we go code 6 with them. We end up going to the wrong location. And the call is basically, so let me preface this call because I didn't say it. It's a man with a gun call, not a shooting, but it's a man with a gun call. And he's despondent over losing his job and his girlfriend, and he's been drinking, and he's armed himself with his pistol from his security job that he just got fired from. And we're like, cool. So we go to the wrong location, and we're there, and we're like, no one's coming out. We're like, hey, have the PR step out to meet, and which is the person reporting. Have them step out to meet. And then they step out, and they're like, yoo-hoo. And we're like, what? Look behind us. And we see him, and we're like, oh, crap, we're at the wrong location. So we go and we run over there, and we just leave our cars. And we start talking to him. She's like, he's over. We live right here, yada, yada. And we're like, oh, we need to go search the house real quick and see if he's there. And then, so my partner stays down with Tom's partner. So we kind of split. I go up with primary. That way, if case suspect pops out, primary unit can be in both places at once. So we're covered on that. So me and my buddy Tom, we go up, we check, we don't see anyone, and then all of a sudden we hear his partner Brett, hey, he's right here. We're like, oh shit. Now we don't have any sources of cover or concealment because we left our vehicles. So Brett spots this dude in the alleyway. He's sitting down, and he's about in the middle of the alleyway, and it's dark out. Not a lot of street lights. There's one street light, maybe two, in this whole alleyway, and it's very long. It's like 4 football fields long, maybe. No, 2 football fields long, maybe 3.
Yeah.
So he's not directly in the middle, but he's far into this alley, and we know he's armed with a gun. So we kind of post up on one of the walls, and we have our guns drawn while the primary unit's trying to get the info on the subject, because at this point we're looking at him as a 5150 because he hasn't committed any crimes, right? He's just walking around with a gun, right? He's brandishing a firearm, right? And he's armed, but it's his gun, and he's a security guard, so he's legally allowed to possess it. So we really don't have much on him at this point other than the 5115. We'll confiscate his gun and, make sure he doesn't get it back unless he can prove that he's not 5150 after a certain period of time. So we're like, okay, we know what we're going to do. And we're sitting there, and then he starts fucking with the gun. And I'm like, uh-oh, this isn't good. And I'm like, hey, we're 2 bunched up on this wall. Okay. Well, there's 3 of us. We can only really get 1 gun unless we expose ourselves, and we have zero cover or concealment. I'm like, I'm going to go get one of the vehicles. And so I run down and I grab my vehicle because it has my rifle in it, and it's an M16. So I go and I grab my car, I bring it back up, and I face it in the mouth of this alley, and I pop the doors open. Doors are ballistic, so now we have more guns downrange. Another unit pops up, and then I basically start controlling the scene because the primary unit is talking to the subject and his family. And so I basically take over tactical command of the scene, and I'm like, hey, I need a unit down here. A unit shows up. I'm like, hey, go down there, block off that alleyway. Do not stand in it. And I'm like, hey, go block off the other sets of the street. Make sure no one comes down. And so basically we just start setting up a grid perimeter. And the next unit comes behind me, and I'm like, hey, because they had showed up, back up. This one unit who comes behind us, they had originally showed up. And we're like, hey, go look for the suspect or the subject. And they start going and looking for him. And then they return after I'm already setting up the perimeter. And I'm like, hey, yeah, come with us. We found him. He's right here. So they responded back to us. And so basically now we have 3 cars there with 2-man units, basically. So you have six officers there. And we're always told more guns downrange, the better. So we basically set up with non-lethal or less than lethal, and then our lethal downrange. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat, like with my rifle on him, because he's on the north side of the alleyway. So passenger side's on the north side, so I have a better angle, I think, on that side. So I post up and I'm on the A pillar and I just have my rifle through the like holding the A pillar and or not the A pillar, the door next to the A pillar, the frame of the door, and the windows roll down so I can C clamp my rifle onto the door, good shooting platform. And I'm like, all right, cool. So now I start giving commands. Hey, the suspect's fucking with the gun. He's sitting down, and this dude's a big man. He's 350 pounds. He's like 6 foot, but he's sitting like cross-legged, and his back's against the concrete wall. So his body is now a lot smaller of a target, and we are about 60 yards away. So, you know, I'm not going to do the math right now. I think it's it's a lot of feet. So
180 feet,
half,
maybe?
Yeah, 180.
Yeah.
It's over half the football field, right? And it's dark out. And I have iron sights. I don't have any optics on this rifle.
Oh, wow.
It's Vietnam era.
Yep.
So I'm like, cool, city issued. I'm like, this is great. But I knew that my pistol was gone. Like I couldn't use it. It's too far.
Right.
I would have to Kentucky windage the shit out of it. So I was like, all right, well, you know, this is a precision weapon system. So I was like, all right, we'll go use this. So I see him and he's messing around with everything. And I'm like, dude, he's messing with this gun. My partner's my classmate, I'm just going to call my partner. We're all partners at this point. He starts talking to the subject, and it's actually the subject's birthday, and it actually is my buddy's birthday. And he's trying to gain, you know, common ground and build a rapport.
Sure.
Dude wants nothing of it. Basically tells him, I've lost my job. I've lost my daughter. I've lost my girlfriend. Everyone left me. I have nothing left to live for. I want to die. And we're like, great. This is going great. Like, oof. Not something you want to hear.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, man, it's not looking good. And I'm yelling this because so everyone can hear me. I'm like, he's got the gun. He's in his hand again. And I think he may have just pointed at us and he put it back down. But it's so far. And I'm like, I don't want to make the wrong call. Everything's running through my brain.
Oh, it's got to be so tough to see any kind of details.
Yeah. And I don't want to make the wrong decision and shoot this man, you know, and, you know, go to prison, you know. So everything's running through my brain.
Sure.
Because the sentiment at this time is, you know, cops are disposable and, you know, let's fry them. Like,
prosecuted for murder on everything.
Exactly. So we just don't feel comfortable. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, dude, I have a bad feeling about this. This ain't going to end well. And I'm like, damn. And then I hear my and I'm like, damn, I'm not putting this out, but I'm like, I think he's fucking pointing the gun at me. But it's so hard to tell. And I'm like, I'm looking and I'm like, I'm tired. It's late. I'm like, fuck, I can't tell. Is he standing? Like, what is going on? I'm like, I'm rubbing my eyes. I'm looking, I'm shaking. I'm like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Because I was in awe. I didn't ever expect to see down someone else's barrel of a gun. Like,
yeah.
Whoa. And I hear at the same time, I'm thinking this. It's within a split second. So it's like everything slows down. So I wasn't just staring at this for like 2 minutes. Like, it was within a second. I hear my buddy, Tom, go, he's going to shoot. He's going to shoot. And he's running. My partner's running, yelling, he's going to shoot. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I'm like, hey, he's pointing the gun. And I duck. At the same time, the poppings. So he's shooting and I'm ducking. Hold on 1 second. Hold on.
No problem. The old mic mute. Kids. Yeah, the old mic mute shit. I get the kids. I do it all the time.
Oh man, my kids just like to mess with one another and one another cry. You can't get some quiet time. It's very difficult. I have 4
feel
kids, you. So as he's saying this, I'm like, fuck, he's gonna shoot. And I hear the pop and I'm ducking at the same time. So everything's kind of happening at the same time. I don't just duck and hide because I'm scared, right? I duck and hide because I'm scared of getting shot in the face. I should have just stayed. That was my fucking fault. I should have stayed. So I never dropped because I ended up switching positions. I ended up putting my gun through the door. I don't know why I kept switching positions. You know, you're constantly thinking and like, oh, what if this is better? What if this is better?
Sure.
Do I have better cover and concealment here? Do I have a better angle here? And so you're constantly looking back and forth and, you know, I'm like, dicking around way too much. Long story short, he shoots at us. I duck. And I'm like, oh, fuck this. And I come back through the door really quick. I punch out, get back on target, and I start letting him rip. And I let about 9 rounds fly downrange. I hit him 5 to 6 times. I hit him in the stomach, the back, the chest. These are all out of order. So I can try to do an order. The chest, the groin, the stomach, the back, and then I think his rectum.
Oof.
So he got hit around 5, 6 times. It was kind of hard to tell because he was lit up with a bunch of rounds, and they only found a couple like stuck in the concrete or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I skipped a couple rounds too, because you're getting shot at, right? You're coming up on targets to visualize the target, and you're letting it rip. And I have a lot of training from the military. You know, you're not. So I have a lot of I have my military training and my police training, and I could go days on talking about how the disconnect in my agency is from the training unit, the firearms training unit, to the actual policy. And what they were teaching us was not necessarily what was written in the policy.
That's tough.
And so it screws a lot. And I laid people out in this one. But I skipped a couple rounds, which is it's normal, right? You're getting shot at. You're trying to, you think you have the target in your sights, and you shoot, but you're a little low. And so you start bringing it up. And by the third round, or the second round I let fly, third round I let fly, I'm on target. And he's still, gun still like this. So I keep shooting. And then he goes down, last round flies, hits him right in the back because he kind of slumps over. And I stop shooting. He's not moving. And I'm like, okay. Next thing I see is my partner, my actual partner, just runs. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? And he basically, we have to drop all of our guns because my partner runs. And I'm like, shit. I'm like, hey, we got to be with him. Like, we can't let him. I'd rather take the car, but we got to get up there. We got to get our guns downrange because he's running towards us, the suspect who just now fired at us. Because now he went from subject to suspect because he's attempt murder on police officers. And so we start running. I come up, and we're kind of doing this leaping and bounding Overwatch. You know, hey, I'm set. All right, I'm moving. Hey, I'm set. I'm moving. And we kind of do this. And so we get up on target or on the suspect. And, you know, the gun is laying right next to him. So one of us kicks out the gun. Hey, and then we handcuff him. And then he goes, and I'm like, oh, shit, he's still alive. And he's moaning and groaning, going in and out. We call the rescue ambulance. Rescue ambulance comes. It takes them freaking forever because fire, like most people know, fire stages down the road because they don't have the training to deal with a lot of this stuff. They do now. They do some active shooter drills now with us. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, like in these types of things, are like, hey, we're going to stage. Let us know when it's clear, and we'll come in.
Not their deal.
And so they came in, and they were just taking fucking forever. And I was like, dude, this dude's dying. Like we're not heartless, man. Like we have hearts. We're cops, but like we can whip your ass and then be calm and collected with you the next second. Like we don't really hold grudges. I'm like, yeah, you tried to kill us, but like now we're switching from that mode of the fight mode to now, hey, we need to render aid and get this guy treated. And he's going in and out of consciousness, and he's groaning. And then we're like, hey man, you're gonna be all right. You're gonna be all right. And then just fucking he's out. And we're like, well, shit. And that time the ambulance shows up. We load him in the back. They take him to the nearest trauma center. Brings him back to life like 5 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So he died on the table a bunch of times. They end up cutting him from his rectum all the way to his chest and open him. He had no more colon. I think it's when you lose your kidneys or something like that, you go on dialysis, right? Is it kidneys?
Yeah.
It's kidneys. So. His kidneys were tossed, done. And his lungs were punctured, and he had no more testicles at this point because they were gone from the round. And he was in the ICU for like months.
Really?
And we had to sit on him the whole time. And I was like, hey, when I came back off my shooting, I was like, hey, I'll go sit on him. They're like, you can't. And I was like, I'm fine. Like, I'm just there to sit there. Like, I kind of want to see what it looks like. And they're like, you can't. And I was like, damn, all right.
Right.
Well, I guess I'll go in the field or whatever. And so, but yeah, so he ended up living for a couple years.
Wow.
It took us about a year to get to court, a year and a half to get to court because he couldn't leave the dialysis machine for longer than an hour. Like he was constantly on dialysis. And finally, they were able to stabilize him after a year and a half, almost 2 years, to get him finally to court. And they wouldn't let me testify. But I had to go down there each day. So I'm clocking all this overtime. And the primary unit actually testified because they wanted to keep me from testifying. I don't know why, but they did. And then they charged him. And then I was going over and over because it was with the district attorney's office. And this was before Gascon. And Gascon covers the county, he covers the city of Los Angeles, he covers any municipality there within that lies within the reach of LA County and LA City. So there's all these other agencies that use him, right? So it's not just these two agencies, it's multiple agencies. And so it's before that office got him, and I'm basically talking with the district attorney or the deputy district attorney, and I'm talking to her, and she's like, so this is what we're thinking. We're going to basically put a tail on him for 5 years, 8 years, something like that, which for people that don't know what a tail is, it's a parole. It's a parole sentence, basically. So you go to prison and you do your time. Say you have 5 years, but you do 2 years good behavior and get out. You have a 3-year tail. So at any point, if you mess up on your parole, in 3 years, they can send you back. So it's just called a tail. And so we're going to give him a 5-year one, but he's not going to do any time in prison. He's going to do time served because he's had 2 years in the jail ward. And I'm like, that's kind of BS. Like, what happened with the attempt murder? What happened to all this stuff? Basically, they knocked it down with ADW and a PO with a firearm and 0 jail time other than what he served in the medical ward. And basically put stipulations, 2 strikes on him. So if he does it again, he'll get a 3rd. And then go back to prison. Can't use alcohol or marijuana because he'll be tested for that to keep him in his right state of mind because of what caused the incident was alcohol and drugs.
Okay.
And I'm like, I was angry. I was like, this is BS, man. I don't wish death on this man, but at the same time, I want him to learn from his actions. Like, he's never been in trouble before. He has a daughter. He wants to raise his daughter. So this is the man that they will give like special things to. And I'm like, man, I get it. But he tried to kill us.
Yeah.
Like that round, if it would have been, if his muzzle would have been over, 6 inches to the right, I might not be here.
Right.
Cause I was staring at him and, small adjustments at great distance.
Yeah, changes his trajectory.
Yeah, it changes it big time. So if it had been a couple inches over, he hit a pipe like square in the center. Like if that, and it was not square. I'm sorry, it was more to the right, so it's closer to like going my way, and it hit, and it was a 40. So I'm like, dude, that's a big round, like to my face, like that.
Yeah, those are powerful.
Where it hit on that pole was exactly where my face was in the cop car, and I'm like, damn, because I went back and took pictures of it,
right,
to see it. To see exactly after all the investigation was done, to see like how close I came to eating a freaking round in my face. And I was like, dude, that was close.
Yeah.
And I was kind of angry too, but at the same time I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like he got shot a bunch of times. He lived, maybe this will be to get him in the right frame of mind. So I was like, all right, I'm fine with it. I'm not judge you an executioner. And the only person who can judge people is Jesus. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
So I'm like, all right. I'm not going to judge him for that. I was angry, understandably, but at the same time, I just let it go. I was like, all right, whatever, you guys do what you're going to do. And I tried to get him for a stronger sentence for a little bit, and then they basically said, nah.
Yeah, because it really does feel like they're not valuing your life. Like,
exactly, and that's how I felt.
It's like you have these cops that are out there risking their ass all the time. They're highly trained. I mean, they've invested a ton of money in you, which is what they seem to only care about. They've invested a ton of money in training into you. Besides that, you're a good person. You have a family. You're doing the right thing. You have a righteous job, and they don't value it. It just seems like they don't value that. They value this guy who is a complete train wreck that tried to kill a bunch of cops.
Right, and that's how it felt. So that's why I was like trying to go for it. Well, one of the other officers like, "No, I don't care. Just it is what it is. Like, let it go. Like, whatever." And I was like, "All right, man, I'll just let it go." So we ended up getting 5 or 8 years sentence, but only served 2, and they'll have the rest on parole. And you'll have 100% search conditions, and you'll have to test like weekly, monthly, whatever it was. I don't remember. But then a few years later, I ended up getting injured, and I'm sitting at home. I got injured in a foot pursuit. That was wild. But I ended up getting injured, and I'm at home, and I just had a couple surgeries, and I get served from DA Gascon's office because he's now the DA. I get placed in a system for deadly shootings or officer involved fatal shootings, and I'm like, whoa! They're serving me at my house, uniforms and everything, placing me in a system that were in DA Gascon's new system that he had developed. That was, if anybody knows anything about the Brady list, there's officers
Yeah.
who have committed perjury on the stand. They can no longer testify. It's called the Brady list.
Right.
Well, he uses the same system to place these shootings in. So now it just gives, even though we've done nothing wrong and they're completely justified and legit, bona fide shootings, we are now placed in this system just because we were involved in a fatal shooting. And I'm like, that skews it the wrong way to get into another one. Now you're screwed. Like, in my opinion, I feel
Yeah.
like they've already put this negative connotation on you of being questionable or whatever. And even though it was all justified, everything was good. Because I don't know if anyone remembers when DA Gascon came in office, he's like, there are so many police shootings that need to be overturned, and I need to reopen them. And we're all like, oh, great. And then we get placed in this list, and we're like, that's not good. But he's placing so many officers in this list. Like, I think he was just trying to like show people like, I'm doing what I said I was going to do. I'm coming after cops. And it was cops from all those different agencies that I just mentioned, like getting placed on this list, and I get served, and I'm like, wait, my guy's dead? And then the sergeant looks at me and he goes, I don't know. And I was like, but you're serving me these papers. Don't you know what this is? He's like, I have no idea. And I'm like, well, let's read it. And I'm on crutches,
Yeah.
on medication. I'm like, well, let's go through it. And he starts reading it to me. I'm like, pause. That sounds like he's dead. Did he die? Did my guy die? This is how I find out that the person that was involved in the shooting is dead. And he goes, that's what it sounds like. It says fatal shooting. You're involved in one. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, I guess that's what it is. So I had to sign this thing, get placed on this list. And I'm like, well, that's great. And it reopened so many of those wounds from the shooting, because that really bothered me.
Of course. Yeah.
I was like, great. And now I'm sitting at home in silence trying to deal with all the stuff now coming back. And I'm like, Jesus, now I'm dealing with the whole thing of being placed in this I don't know, system of other officers. Then there were so many.
Like, yeah, because it's essentially like you're human, so you feel bad you had to do it, even though it was righteous, right? Yeah. So you already have that feeling, but you can intellectually tell yourself, and people will tell you you had no other choice; it had to be done. But you still feel bad because you're human, and then you have someone come to your door, essentially saying, "Bad job, he died. You're on a special list now." That's like what they're telling you, and it's like,
yeah. Even though it was 100% justified, and you're like, dude, it was justified. There was no issues. I'm not being indicted. Like, there's no issues in the shooting. Like, why?
That's nuts, man. That's nuts.
Why do you have to place me in this list? Like, because now I'm thinking the only thing I can think of, and other officers, and there were thousands of officers in this list. Like, thousands,
I bet.
just started flooding in there, and so I'm like, well, that's cool. So now I'm thinking, I'm like, if I get into another shooting, like, they're already going to have this negative. It's like trying people by media before the jury. It puts a bad taste in their mouth, and they already have this negative connotation upon you. And so that's what I was worried for. But it was crazy. Man. I was like, man. And that one bothered me for a while.
Yeah.
Still does. But if I was placed in the same situation again, I would do nothing different.
Right. Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to. Like, I do my job. Like, there was no other option.
Right. Yeah, that's just unbelievable, man. I mean, I can read the news headlines myself and the articles and videos about Gascon and make my own decision, but I also have friends out there that are in law enforcement, and no one likes him. Like, nobody likes this guy at all. He's he's the worst.
No, yeah, it's basically, yeah, and he controls a big area too, like a big area. Like his reach goes very far. for the district attorney's office because they deal with so many cases from a lot of agencies.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it's just that's the scary thing because man, like there was just a deputy just got murdered out where I live, and he doesn't even want to seek the death penalty because he's like, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to bring the deputy back. So why do I ruin this other person's life and put him, and seek the death penalty or life without parole? And we're like, what?
Wow.
What about the family of this officer?
Right.
This deputy, like they have to live with their son being murdered and they get zero justice. I mean, yeah, the guy's going to go to prison, but he's probably going to be released.
Yeah. Then they know he's out there walking the same streets as them.
Right. So it's like, you're not even seeking the death penalty for this guy. Like what? Like this is crazy. So it's a scary time we live in, especially when you have radical, district attorneys who are supposed to be on your side, who are supposed to be helping you and win cases and things like that, but it's like he's actively working against and eroding the fabric of law enforcement at the same time.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's so weird to me, man. Like I'm in the Northeast, and like our DA's office, like DA, like has pretty much has your back. Like, as we work with these guys to prosecute the criminals we arrest, and they want to get convictions. Most police shootings, they're looking at the cops not to get them, but to cross the T's and dot the I's, but then make it a good shooting. End of story. So, and this is, I mean, I'm in Massachusetts, which is an extremely liberal state, but for some reason, when it comes to that stuff and with law enforcement in general in Massachusetts, they are as liberal as we are, because we're like California Junior over here. They've relatively been like hands off with police. Like our budgets have gotten bigger. Most places in Mass, they support us. They like the liberals here, like being safe. They like to know cops are out there. You know what I mean? Like it's not the same type of liberal that SoCal has. It's a different flavor,
Right. It's like the Beverly Hills liberal.
Yeah, they're totally detached from reality because they're completely removed from it. So they have private security and they live in a place where they could, walk at any time of day, pretty much.
Like Beverly Hills is wild because there's conservative people who live in Beverly Hills. Don't get me wrong, but there are many liberals who live there, but they know the police there are there for them and they pay their salaries. They pay our salaries, right? And when they say, I pay your salary, they really pay your salary. So if they call you for service to their house to take their trash cans out, guess what you're doing? You're taking their fucking trash cans out. Like, it's that type of level of, I guess, caring they get from the cops, that they actually pay them very well. They make sure they hit raises. They make sure they because they're there to take care of them. So they know if they take care of the law enforcement.
And they pay them high in Beverly Hills, high salaries.
Yeah, very, very high. You start there at like 120, 130.
Right.
As a patrol officer. And it goes up to like 160, 180. Like, it's crazy. And then you make sergeant. And then it's like, you're sitting at 200, like
lights
easy.
Out. Yeah. So they don't have like the general... I'm here for the greater good. I'm not here to be your individual servant. But in Beverly Hills, it is individual servitude. Like, no, I said come to my house and help me lock my doors for the night or whatever. It's like, okay.
Right. It's protect and serve. And it's a whole new level of protecting and serving. But you know what? Like, I kind of like it, like, too, because, you're there to take care of them. You scratch their back, they scratch yours. Like, you're protected. Like,
yeah, there's
they
that.
don't allow bullshit to come into their city. Yeah, they don't allow that stuff. And they're like, hey, we have transients. Get rid of them. You're like, okay. There is one transient in Beverly Hills, at least when I went there. There was one.
Drag this guy to West Hollywood.
They would push him out, a lot, and they would push him out to the neighboring divisions of LAPD. And I was there, and I was talking, there because I was trying to get a job with Beverly Hills, and
yeah, why not?
So, and passed everything. I ended up turning it down, but for some other personal reasons, because I was going through a divorce. But I should have went. I should have kicked myself in the ass every day for not going. But they literally introduced me to the one transit they had. They were cool with, and he would just chill at the police station.
Hey, this is Jim. What's up?
Yeah, I met him. Like, the dude was chill. Like, you're like, oh, okay, cool. But complacency. Don't ever get complacent with a freaking transient. Don't ever do it. It'll bite you in the ass. It did with me.
Yeah,
Went
absolutely.
here to fight me. And I was like, damn, dude. Like,
Not to be trusted.
no. Because when they use drugs, all reason goes out the window.
Right. Yeah, I used to do a security gig at Harry Winston, and they would have their local friendly transient. There's a couple of them that would come in, and the Harry Winston the clerks would, they would play with them. Okay, yeah, you want to look? They would, because they're at Harry Winston. When you come into boutique, salespeople are supposed to lick your butt. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
But so even the transients, they were like, they want to see all this stuff, and you're just wackadoos. You know what I mean? And it's me and a bunch of other armed people in suits just watching them and laughing because it was just nice to see the super rich boutique people have to deal with someone like that because let me tell you, as soon as like a customer left, the boutique staff was cutting them up. Like no one was safe. They seemed to be like the most vicious people I've ever worked around. It was crazy. But hey, Chuck, I've had you on for over an hour. I know you got 4 kids and things to do. 2 more quick questions.
Sure.
Do you have a heartwarming story from the job that you'd like to share?
Yeah, this one will be quick. I won't go into detail on it. It'll be really quick. So basically, when I was on probation, I dealt with a sexual assault call, and it was with a child. And those are very rough to deal with, and I had to deal with a bunch of them. So this one we dealt with. We ended up getting the girl into safety, and so we got her into safety, got her into protective custody, whatever, and arrested the suspect who had been molesting her since she was, 6 years old.
Oh, jeez.
And when we got the call, she was in high school. So years of trauma, no one helped her. We came along, immediately arrested him, took her into safety, and we just tried to get her the best help we could. And then once we did the report, notified CPS and arrested the guy, we're done. Our hands are off unless we go to court. Never went to court on it. I don't really know what happened. And I was like, damn, like it would be nice to get closure.
Yeah.
And to see what happened. Freaking years later, I'm working a different area, and it's the middle of the night. Or it's kind of like not middle of the night. I would say it's more like 7, 8 p.m. So it's dark, but it's not the middle of the night. It's evening time, and we're working my area, and we have a bunch of schools in the area, and there was a car parked in the school, and we're parking lot. We're like, oh, that's odd. Let's go check it out, because it's a drug area, right? There's a lot of drug area, but it's not a bad area. There's just a lot of dope that floats around the area. So our job is to go and do suppression and try to get dopers off the street. And so we stopped this car, or stop on the stopped car, and there's just 2 kids in the back. And we're like, hey, what's going on? And 2 young kids in high school, and they're just like, oh, well, telling us their whole story. And we're like, oh, okay. And then she looks at me, and she's like, calls me by my name. And I'm like, whoa, who are you? And how do you know my name? She's like, you don't remember me? And I was like, I'm so sorry. I've come in contact with so many people.
Right.
Like, you look familiar, but can you jog my memory? And she's like, yeah. She tells me the whole thing. And she's like, you were the one who, basically talked me into telling the truth, and you came to help me, and you got me out of a bad situation where I was being molested. And I was like, oh shit, that's you. Oh my God, how are you doing? She's like, I'm doing so much better. I'm like in a better spot. I'm in a better place. I'm going to school out here now. I live out here. I'm not there anymore. I'm not in danger, all this other stuff. And she's like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be in the spot that I am. And she's like, I don't know where I'd be. You basically saved my life. And I was like, oh fuck.
Damn.
Like, I was like, holy shit. My partner looks at me. He's like, whoa, caught him off guard. And I was like, damn. I was like, well, get on your way. Like, I'm not going to keep you. Just checking, making sure you're okay. And, making sure this was no, criminal activity was going on, because it's a school. She's like, no, we're just sitting here with my boyfriend. I'm like, oh my God, I'm glad you're doing great. And I'm like, well, have a good night, I guess.
Yeah.
And because I'm not like one of the type of cops who will go and fish for a compliment.
Sure.
Or accommodation. So I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to bother you anymore. Be on your way. I'm glad you're safe. And she's like, thank you so much. And, brought a tear to my eye. I was like, damn, dude, choked me up. And I was like, fuck, how many of these have I done? And how many have I gotten closure on? I've done so many. And this is the first time I've ever gotten closure. And I
Damn,
was like,
that's
damn,
great.
it was awesome. And it really goes full 360 on it. And to go full 360 on something like that, you're like, wow, that really meant something. And it's happened a couple more times, but on different types of incidents and calls. But that was the only time that I've seen a child that I've helped that is now okay because of me. So that was cool.
I love it. Beautiful story, man. That's awesome. Last question, Chuck. Might be a tough one from you because you've had you're a hard-nosed city cop, but can you give some advice to new police officers? A lot of listeners on the show, and like my favorite email I get is someone who's like, I listened to your guests tell their stories, and I decided to pull the trigger and become a cop. And it's like, awesome, making baby cops over here. That feels great. To me, that's like a measure of success. I'm like, that is great. So what would you tell people thinking about doing it or getting into it?
Well, know that this is a profession that's going to follow you home. Try to keep it separate. If you really want to do the job, make sure that you work for a city who will support you. I know if you want to work in your hometown to have that, and if that's stuck in your head, even though it might be in California or another liberal city, if that's where you want to work and that's where you have the most pride, work there, because having the pride where you work is going to make your days so much better and easier. Even when you're stuck on the long calls, working overtime, maybe working a double, maybe, because sheriffs, they'll work 8 hours, but they'll work double. So they'll work a 16 just to try to get an extra day off, so you really got to love where you're at and love what you do.
Sure.
So for a lot of people, that's going to be going where you're appreciated, and make sure you check that out. So like there's within blue states, there are, red agencies. Okay. Which means they're pretty much conservative agencies. And those are the agencies you're really going to want to work for.
Yeah.
You don't want an agency that's really liberal, because they are going to tie your hands a lot. And right now, cops' hands are already tied no matter what across the country. You're looked upon differently. You're basically tried before in the media before you're even tried before your own peers. So just keep that in mind. Know that it is a different area of policing nowadays. It's a different age. Things are different. It's, you have to be very careful in what you do. You're on camera everywhere. It used to be when I came on, you're on camera everywhere. People have flip phones. They have razor phones, they're going to be recording you no matter what.
Yeah.
Now it's, you have a camera in your car, you have a camera on your chest, and everybody else is filming you. And now you have Ring doorbell cameras. You have the Google Nest cameras. You're on videotape 24 hours a day. Just know that. So don't do dumb stuff, and know that if you mess up, own it, because if you get caught in a lie, you'll be fired. So if you fuck up, own it. Just own it. You may get some days on the beach. You may screw you on a promotion for a little bit, but know that it's better to have that job and do it honorably than to lie and try to get ahead that way, because it's going to bite you in the ass. Be prepared to fight for your life, because it's going to happen one day. Every fight you're in is a fight for your life, because there's always a gun involved against your gun. Know that fighting is part of the job description. You will be involved in a fight. So if you've never been punched in the face, you might want to get punched in the face and see how it feels before you become a cop. You get it in the academy. I mean, everyone who's never been, involved in a fight, they were the first people to go and do Red Man and to do boxing, so just know that it's a dangerous job, and know that it's mentally taxing. And don't be the tough guy or the tough gal who's like, I can handle it. I don't need therapy. You need fucking therapy. You're going to need it. So make sure that you have a therapist, someone to talk to, because eventually you're going to need it. And I'm not talking about the department psych stuff. I'm talking about like your own private stuff, because you're going to get hit with some pretty like heavy stuff at some point in your career, regardless if you work a small agency or a big agency, you're going to hit with some heavy stuff, and know that you're going to need someone to talk to. So we might as well have that lined up prior,
Smart.
And there's there's nothing wrong with therapists. There's nothing wrong with having a therapist, just on a monthly basis, going and checking in. And regardless if you're in your normal life, if you're not a cop and you're just doing a normal job, there's going to be things that stress you out, that bother you, and to have a professional person to bounce that off of, to make sure that you're not crazy, and they can help you with coping mechanisms with whatever you're being involved in, is a big thing. And it's a tool belt. It's a tool that you put in your tool belt. So it's a weapon. Why wouldn't you take every weapon you can into battle with you, and protect your body, and you got to protect your brain. So many cops are like, oh, I'm going to just, be physically fit and stuff. You could be the fittest cop, but you could be mentally weak.
Yeah.
and that shit can follow you home and bother you. You got to be physically strong. You got to train your body. You got to train your mind. It's the same thing. So have um, that tool in your tool belt all ready to go. What else for young cops? Um, know that you're going to have to put in your time before you get anything, remotely good. Um, like working certain times of the day. If you're new, you're going to be working nights. Be prepared to work nights. Be prepared to work holidays. Have that mental mindset before you go in that I'm going to have to fight for my life. I'm going to have to hurt someone at some point to protect someone else. And I have to be prepared to take a life. That's the biggest thing that I tell these new
Yeah.
booties coming in. And I'm like, are you prepared to take a life? Are you prepared to fight for your own life? Are you prepared to basically fight to the death? Are you? They're like, I don't want to. You might have to. And
Right.
nowadays it's becoming more and more important to have cops that can, they can fight and things like that, and to be mentally strong, because in my shooting that I had, I was the only one that shot. Everyone else, like, and I'll never call anyone my brother as a coward or anything like that, but they were scared. And it's a normal human response to hide. And they hid behind me behind the door. And I mean, they finally came up on target after they heard me shoot, but they were legit scared, and so was I. We all ducked. So
Yeah, absolutely.
they're. I mean, don't matter how strong. They're some of the strongest dudes I know, and it doesn't matter how strong you are. You don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And they tell me every day, like they used to. They're like, dude, you saved our life. Thank you so much. And I was like, hey, I had like 5 people come up to me and tell me I saved their life. And that's other cops, and I'm like, that means a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, but you have to be prepared to be in that situation. So have a Chesty Puller said it the best. Not was it Chesty Puller? No, not Chesty Puller. Mad Dog Mattis, former commandant of the Marine Corps. Have a plan to kill everyone you meet.
I've heard that before. That was him.
Yeah, yeah. So you need to have that plan. And I'm not saying you're bloodthirsty. You're looking to kill someone, but you're in a position where you may have to take someone's life. You need to be mentally okay with that, and because it's going to happen. And you need to make sure you know your policies, procedures, all that good stuff, because it's going to help you. So just be mentally prepared, and that's the biggest thing I can say is be mentally prepared to take someone's life, to protect your own or someone else's, to protect a citizen's life, and be prepared to be in a fight, because it's going to happen, and it could happen day one.
Words of wisdom, man. That was great. Chuck, what makes the grass grow?
Blood.
I heard a Marine say that once. And I was like, wow.
Blood. Yeah.
It's great,
Oh.
dude.
Yeah. And it's crazy.
Phenomenal. All right, brother. I really appreciate your time, man. We're going on almost an hour and a half. I know it's a Saturday, but before we go, let's talk about War Stories, where they can find it. Obviously, our podcasts are very similar, and people are always looking for more content like this. So double up your libraries here. You can bounce back and forth and double your content. So match made in heaven, I think.
Yeah, so you can find us. We have a website. It's www.warstoriesofficial.com. You can also find us at our Instagram at war_stories_official, and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. And then you can also be a guest on the show if you want. If you have a story you want to share, and you can go to booking.warstories@gmail.com. Sorry. Again, that is booking.warstories@gmail.com. And we also have our mailbag, mailbag.warstories@gmail.com. But if you go to our socials, or Facebook or Instagram, we do have a link in our bio that you can reach everything. So if you forget it, there's links to YouTube, there's links to Instagram, Facebook, or emails, both the mailbag if you want to ask a question, or the booking if you want to be featured on the show. And that's the best way to get a hold of us. Yeah. And you can send us a DM if you want to just shoot the shit or whatever. But if you want to come on the show, go to the emails.
Perfect. And I'll link I'll link War Stories in the show notes, whatever you want me to link, whether it be the website or Spotify or Apple. I'll put that on there. And I should have said this to Thomas, but have had tons of characters on this show that would probably be great for an appearance on your show. If you're interested in somebody, just let me know and I can hook you guys up. Because as I tell the audience all the time, it's like, I got to feed the beast here. People love to hear the stories, but we need people to come on to tell the stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's tough with compers, because I've spoken to so many cops and military. that it's hard to talk and share, and some of them don't want to do it. But I can tell you this: get that shit off your chest. It's cathartic. And I've some of the toughest men I know, some of the toughest Marines have come on the show, and they're like, "Wow." And it was a gunny who did it. He told me, he's like, "That was really cathartic. Thank you so much. I didn't think I was gonna like it, but getting that off my chest after 10 years felt good."
Yeah, people have a blast.
Just know that we're here to shoot the shit. It doesn't have to be, the bad stories. It could be the funny ones, or the ones that maybe bothered you a little bit, but you got over it, and maybe you can share that experience with someone else to help them get over it. So yeah, if there's people you want to send my way, and that'd be great. And vice versa, if I'll put it out there and blast it on our stuff. If you want to, you think you might want to go on this show or check it out, that's why we're doing this. We're linking both podcasts together to get the message out there, to help more people. And that's what it's all about. It's about a brotherhood, sisterhood to help others.
Hell yeah, absolutely. Chuck, honored to have you on, man. Thank you for the phenomenal stories. Thank you for sharing all that stuff. Really, really, really good insight to what you might have to deal with as a cop. I think it was really valuable for everybody to hear. I'm going to do the outro now. I know you probably have a Saturday plan and you want to get going. If you want to hang out for a couple minutes, we can chat afterwards, or we can just catch up later. Up to you.
I'll chat for a second with you. Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
All right, cool.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Chuck from War Stories, phenomenal stories, crazy experiences. I was talking to him before we came on, and I've always worked at smaller places, and not taking anything away from smaller agencies, but you'll have your things, and you will have like this recovery time built in because of it. It's just a different place to work. Being a city cop is different than county or municipality or smaller place. But when you are a cop in a city with tons of people, you don't get that time. You are just going call to call to call, and that is intense. So phenomenal. Thank you for giving us that insight. Loved it. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for rating and reviewing. Always appreciate that. This is the time of the show where I'm going to thank the Patreon sergeants. Who I'm talking about is Andy Biggs, Greg Gadboy, Adam Mehall, the great Chris June, Gary Steiner, Jake Pinito, the great John Shoemaker, Lauren Stimson, everybody, the handsome Lane Campbell, Seth Wright, James Rose, everyone, the great Tony Fahey, Ben Peters, Braden Walker, Jason Lau, everybody, the great Mike Wynn, Sasha McNabb, the great Scott Minkler, Tammy Walsh holding it down at dispatch, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, thank you very much, sir. Sean Clifford, Dennis Carrasquillo coming at you. Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles. Check out his podcast. George Tessier. See you at church, my man. Scott Young, the great Tom Connell. I'll see you at church. Wayne M. Miller, retired ATF and author. Dan Carlson from Burley Boars. Doug and Kelly Newman. Love you guys. I will see you at church. Dave Albin. Elliot Sykes. The great Richard Tolles. Keep on trucking, my man. Be safe out there. Christian. Jace Crow, the great Brad Thompson, Kyle Robert, Zach Haney, the great Nancy Hammond, Clark Law Cuff, and Adam McMahon. Thank you to the Patreon sergeants for keeping the boat afloat, for supporting the show. Truly appreciate that. Appreciate you. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, officerprivacy.com. Keep your stuff off the internet. Make it more difficult for the wackos, the weirdos to find you and your family. Guys, that's it for this week. I will see you next time.